The sun was shining that day. A warm breeze blew through the city, stirring the canvas covering the marketplace booths that lined the streets. To anyone just arriving in Jerusalem, it would seem just like any other day before Passover. But to those of us who followed the carpenter from Nazareth, the one called Jesus Bar Joseph, this day was far from ordinary. It was the day Jesus died. Early that morning, John, Jesus' mother, and I hurried through the streets towards Pilate's palace. We hoped to just get even a glimpse of Jesus, maybe even find someone there who might be able to let us speak to him. A large crowd had already gathered around Pilate's judgment seat. John tried to find his way through the crowd near the front, but the people wouldn't let him through. Maybe it was for the best. As much as we longed to be as close to Jesus as possible, it would be better for us not to be recognized. We hovered near the gates. I held protectively onto Mary, fearing she would collapse if I even just let go of her for a second. Pilate appeared, holding up his hands for silence. The crowd hushed.
Quiet! Quiet! I have found no fault in this man. Neither has Herod. He's done nothing deserving of death. But you have a custom during Passover that I should release one man. So, should I release the murderer Barabbas or the so-called King of the Jews?
Soldiers appeared, Jesus between them. Dried blood was crusted under his nose and in his beard. Dirt smudged his clothes and face. One of the sleeves of his tunic was torn at the shoulder. Two other soldiers approached, half dragging, half wrestling this wild man. This must be Barabbas. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Please say Jesus," I whispered. "Please, Adonai, save your son." Mary squeezed my hand.
Give us Barabbas! 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 Give us Barabbas! Release Jesus! Give us Jesus!
I couldn't believe my ears. How could the very people who welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem with palm branches and shouts of "Hosanna" and "Hosanna to the Son of David" now be calling for the release of a known murderer and criminal? Pilate looked at Jesus, then Barabbas, then back at Jesus again. Jesus' gaze was on the crowd. With a wave of his hand, Pilate dismissed Barabbas to be released. He said something to the soldiers with Jesus, who then led Jesus away into the palace. John began pacing back and forth. I guided Mary to one of the gate pillars, helping her sit down against it. Tremors shook her body as she sat, her eyes closed and lips moving in a silent prayer for her son. "Where did they take him?" I mumbled to John, not wanting Mary to hear our discussion. John stared at me for a moment, color draining from his face. He turned away, blinking back tears. Whatever it was, he did not want to tell me. I returned to Mary, ready to help her up the moment Jesus returned. As I pleaded and I begged God to stop whatever was happening, a part of a prayer that Jesus had taught us came to my mind.
Your will be done.
How could this be God's will? It couldn't. This couldn't be his will for Jesus.
Your will be done.
Adonai, I can't. I just can't pray that. I don't understand how this could be your will for Jesus. Please help me understand this.
People of Jerusalem,
Mary grabbed my arm, scrambling up from her seat on the ground. John again tried to press his way closer to the front. The crowd refused to let him in.
I have scourged him and am bringing him out again to show you that I find no fault in him. Behold the man.
Two soldiers came forward, dragging what looked like a man. He couldn't even stand up straight without a soldier supporting him. A scarlet cloth had been draped across his shoulders, his own tunic stained crimson. On his head, a crude wreath of thorns had been smashed down upon it. Blood streamed down his swollen face, into his eyes, his mouth, and his beard. His head hung to one side. This is what they had done to Jesus. Beaten him within an inch of his life and mocked him. Mary let out a cry and sank to the ground, sobbing. I knelt beside her, holding her to my chest. I looked to John for help and found him bent over double outside the gate, vomiting up whatever was left in his stomach of the Passover. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't run and leave Mary alone. I couldn't push through the crowd to reach Jesus. How can this be your will? I thought.
Again I ask, what shall I do with this man? Why? What, pray tell, is the crime that he has committed?
He claimed to be our king. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. If you release him to us, you are no friend of Caesar.
Silence!
The crowd fell silent, and I could just hear the faint splashing of water against metal.
In the sight of all of you, I wash my hands and am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. Let this man be crucified. His blood is on your hands, not mine.
Mary's fingers dug deep into my arm as the mob roared in approval. I barely noticed it compared to the piercing, nauseating knots twisting in my own stomach. There was nothing we could do now, no hope of a miraculous rescue or Jesus putting an end to all of this. Not even our group's own zealot could do anything now to save Jesus. I jumped at the heavy touch of a hand on my shoulder. It was John.
We should get her away from here. She shouldn't have to watch this.
No, I am going to my son. I was there when he came into this world and took his first breath. I will be there when he leaves it and breathes his last.
Mary, you shouldn't...
I am going to my son. Whether you come with me or not is your choice, but I am going to him.
I will come with you, I said as I stood and helped Mary up from the ground. John reluctantly stood up, wrestling with the choice to run and hide or to follow his rabbi and his friend to the very end. Mary reached out and took one of John's hands in her own.
I need you there with me. He needs you to be there with him. Please. Please, John.
John choked back a sob and nodded. The crowd from Pilate's courtyard migrated to the streets. We followed, trying to stay unnoticed. People began to jeer and yell. The snap of a whip hitting flesh made my knees buckle. Then I saw him. The crossbeam had been laid across his shoulders. His whole body tremored from the weight of the beam. Each step he took threatened to cause him to stumble to the ground. The Romans around him beat him again and again and again. Spit and curses flew from both Jewish and Roman mouths. At a steep part of the road leading out of the city, Jesus fell, the beam crushing him to the ground. More beatings and screams from the Romans followed. Jesus tried to push himself up, but collapsed. A centurion commanded the others to stop whipping him and find someone to help him carry the cross. In that moment of distraction, Mary rushed forward to where Jesus lay. John and I tried to stop her, but we were shoved back by the crowd. I could just see her through the mob. She was trying to wipe the blood from his eyes and face. A soldier came back with a man ordering him to pick up the crossbeam. He grabbed Mary and threw her back into the crowd.
Jesus, Mother! Have some mercy!
When I reached Mary, 2 other women were there with her, Salome, John's mother, and Ada, Peter's wife. They helped her stand, brushing her off and checking for any injuries. Finding that she was not harmed, we continued on. Through the gates, out of the city, climbing up the winding road leading to the place of the skull, the hill of death. 2 other men were crucified that day, already hanging on their crosses as we approached. At the top of the hill, the man who had been helping carry the beam dropped it and stood staring down at Jesus for a moment before turning and leaving.
No further.
A centurion and a few other soldiers blocked our way. I watched helplessly as Jesus had his tunic ripped off of him and was thrown to the ground. 2 Romans dragged him to the beam, stretching his arms out as far as they would go. Another approached with nails and a mallet in hand. He knelt on Jesus' arm and pressed a nail into his wrist. He raised the mallet and swung. Blood-curdling screams from Jesus was more than I could bear. Over and over again, the mallet struck the nail, driving it further into Jesus' wrists and the wood. Each time he cried out in agony, Mary shook as if she had been slapped. John and I grabbed her and held her between the 2 of us.
My son! My son! My precious son!
Lifted the beam and attached it to an upright stake in the ground. Every movement, every jostle sent Jesus into screams, his body writhing in pain. When the beam was secure, one last spike was driven through his feet. I fell to my knees, unable to stand before my crucified rabbi. My hands clawed at the ground, gathering fists of rock and dirt. Jesus hung above us, his body broken, torn, barely resembled the man I had followed from village to village. Blood had dried along his arms where the nails held him. Each breath came with a terrible effort, his chest lifting and falling in slow agony. Around the crosses, the soldiers laughed quietly among themselves, casting lots for his robes as though this were nothing more than another afternoon's work. Mary stood nearest the cross, John right at her side. She did not wail like the others. Her grief was quieter, deeper somehow, as if it had been carved out of something inside her that no sound could fill. Beside her stood Salome, her hands clenched in her skirts, her face streaked with tears that never seemed to stop. Ada stood beside her, one arm wrapped around her shoulders. I stayed just behind, my hands trembling as I pressed them together, trying to pray and failing because every word turned into a sob. Jesus lifted himself slightly on the nails and gasped for a breath. A cry escaped his throat, low and pained.
Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Mary flinched. John's arm tightened around her.
I have you.
I had known John for many months now. I had seen him laugh until he could hardly breathe. I had seen him tease his brother and argue with Peter and recite whole passages of scripture from memory with a proud grin. I had never seen him like this. His face was pale beneath the streaks of dust and tears. His eyes never left Jesus for long, as though he feared the moment he looked away might be the moment everything ended. How is this your will, Adonai? They are killing him, and you are doing nothing. I cannot forgive them, Lord. I can't. I pounded the ground with my fists. Please don't ask this of me.
Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you.
Jesus' teaching from the mountainside echoed in my ears. When I looked back at Jesus, his eyes were on me. I can't, I whispered, shaking my head. Jesus' gaze remained on me. Forgive them. Pray for them, a small voice inside repeated. Adonai, help me. I am not strong enough to do what you are asking. Help me to forgive the ones doing this to your son. I locked eyes with Jesus. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they are doing to him. Jesus shifted again above us, the movement sending a shudder through his whole body. Every so often he would push himself up and gasp for a breath before sinking back down, unable to withstand the pain from the nail in his feet. Over and over again he did this. Tremors and cramps seized his arms and legs. A few times he would slip into unconsciousness, a small mercy that wouldn't last long before the lack of air brought him back. During one of these moments of consciousness, Jesus spoke again.
Mother, here is your son.
Jesus looked over at John. The words came slowly, pulled through pain.
She is your mother.
Mary's composure broke.
My son.
John lowered Mary carefully to sit upon the ground beside the cross.
I'm here. I will not leave you.
For a long moment, there was only the wind and the labored sound of breathing from the cross. Mary's gaze left her son and settled on Salome. I had not realized until now how still Salome had become. Her hands were clenched together so tightly, her knuckles were pale, and her shoulders trembled, though she made no sound. Mary watched her for a moment.
John,
Yes, Mother?
go to her.
John followed her gaze. Salome quickly looked away, as though she did not wish for him to see the tears falling down her face.
I cannot leave you.
You are not leaving me. I am not alone.
Her eyes settled on us briefly. The woman gathered around her. Then she nodded again towards Salome.
Go.
Reluctantly, John stepped away from Mary and crossed the small distance to his mother.
Mother?
Salome tried to smile at him, but it broke halfway across her face. John reached for her hands.
Your hands. They're cold.
Something inside him seemed to crack. His shoulders sagged. He looked back at the cross. Jesus cried out in pain as another breath tore through his chest.
I cannot bear it. I thought he would. I thought.
He stopped, pressing a hand over his mouth as if he were trying to force the grief back down. But it would not stay buried. His knees bent, and he lowered himself to the ground before her.
I cannot watch him die. I should have done something. I should have stopped them. I'm supposed to be strong. For him. For his mother. For you.
No, John. Mary doesn't need you to be anything more than who you already are. Nor do I. Right now, you need to be who Jesus knows you are. The one whom he loves. The one who can love others the way he has.
John's head fell against her shoulder as the sobs finally broke free. For a moment, he did not look like the bold fisherman who had followed Jesus across Galilee. He looked like a child who needed his mother.
I'm here. John, I'm right here. You are not alone.
John clung to her like a drowning man. Above us, the sky began to darken, as though the world itself could no longer bear the sight. Soldiers and onlookers alike began to whisper nervously, questioning if this could be some kind of omen. The cross creaked again. Mary still stood beneath it, her eyes lifted toward her son.
My God. My God, why have you forsaken me?
I had heard him cry out before, over storms, over demons, over the brokenness of men, but never like this. Never with such desolation. It echoed inside me, down into the places he had once freed. For a moment I was back there again, on the street, on the ground, alone. The darkness inside me whispering that I had been abandoned, that no one was coming. My breath hitched. No, he had come. He had found me. He had called me by name. I forced my eyes upward again.
He calls for Elijah.
I wanted to scream at them. He did not need saving. He had chosen this. Hadn't he? I moved towards Mary and joined her at the foot of the cross. I glanced at her, my heart breaking anew. How does a mother watch this? How does she not collapse beneath it? Above us, Jesus struggled for a breath again. His body shuddered against the nails. Every movement seemed to cost him everything.
I thirst.
The words seemed quieter now, thinner, human, so painfully human. The sponge was lifted to his lips. I could smell the sour wine it held.
It is finished.
The words, they were not a cry of defeat. They were something else. Something final. Something complete. Something that I wanted to understand.
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
And then he let go. His head fell forward. Stillness. No breath. No movement. Nothing. The ground beneath trembled suddenly, violently throwing me to my knees. The rock split with a cracking roar, and cries from fear rose on every side. The centurion stumbled back, staring up at the cross with wide eyes.
Surely, this man was the Son of God.
I crawled forward, my hands grasping at the earth, until I reached the foot of the cross again. No! No, no! This could not be the end. He had cast out the darkness. He had spoken life. He had called me out of the grave I had been living in. He could not... My vision blurred with tears. Goodbye. I whispered, my voice breaking completely now. Please. The wind howled across the hill. The sky remained dark. And for the first time since he had found me, I did not know what came next.